My name is Drew Harlan, and I used to believe that the worst thing about being a high school English teacher was grading essays about what I did last summer. I was wrong. The worst thing is discovering that your wife of 12 years has been treating your marriage like a rough draft, something to be revised, edited, and ultimately discarded for a better version. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, scattered around our pristine Briarwood home like breadcrumbs leading to a house made of lies. Natalie had started working late more often, her real estate business suddenly requiring evening showings that stretched past midnight. Her phone had developed a mysterious case of face-down syndrome, always resting screen side down on every surface. And the texts. The texts that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in months. Who's that? I'd ask, watching her fingers dance across the screen with the enthusiasm she used to reserve for our conversations. Just Mia, she'd say, not looking up. You know how she gets about the PTA drama. Mia Rodriguez was Natalie's best friend and the neighborhood's unofficial gossip coordinator. If there was drama in Briarwood, Mia knew about it before it even finished happening. But the smile Natalie wore while texting wasn't the eye-rolling smirk she usually reserved for Mia's latest suburban scandal reports. This was different, softer, secret. The first real crack in my denial came on a Tuesday evening in October. I was grading papers in my home office when I heard Natalie on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low and intimate. I can't wait either, she was saying. Tom doesn't suspect anything. He's too buried in his students' terrible poetry to notice what's happening in his own house. Tom? My name is Drew. I'd been Drew for 39 years. Drew when we met. Drew when we married. Drew when we bought this house. Tom was either a slip of the tongue or a deliberate attempt to distance herself from the reality of what she was doing. Neither option filled me with confidence about the state of my marriage. I set down the essay I was grading, a particularly painful piece about why Romeo and Juliet were relationship goals, and crept closer to the kitchen doorway. The hotel downtown has those suites with the jacuzzi, Natalie continued. We could finally use those points I've been saving. Hotel points, jacuzzi suites. This was definitely not a conversation about open houses or commission splits with her real estate team. Thursday works perfectly, she said. He has that faculty meeting that always runs late. We'll have ours, Thursday. Faculty meetings. She had my schedule memorized not for romantic dinner planning, but for strategic adultery scheduling. I had to admire the efficiency, even as it made me want to put my fist through the drywall. I backed away from the kitchen and returned to my office, my hands shaking as I picked up my red pen. The essay in front of me blurred as I tried to process what I'd just heard. 12 years of marriage, and apparently I'd been demoted to Tom, a generic placeholder husband whose predictable schedule made him the perfect cuckold. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my career before teaching as a journalist, investigating other people's secrets and exposing their lies. Now I was living in the middle of the biggest story of my life, and I'd been too comfortable, too trusting, too stupid to see it developing right under my nose. That night, I lay in bed next to Natalie, listening to her breathe and wondering how long this had been going on. She slept peacefully, one hand tucked under her pillow, the other resting on her phone. Even in sleep, she kept her secrets close. The next morning brought our usual routine with a new layer of performance art. Natalie made coffee and toast, humming while she moved around the kitchen. She kissed my cheek before I left for work, the same quick peck she'd given me for years, but now it felt like a lie pressed against my skin. Have a good day, honey, she said, already reaching for her phone before I'd even made it to the door. At school, I found myself analyzing my students' behavior with new eyes. The way Jennifer Morrison passed notes to her boyfriend during my lecture on symbolism in The Great Gatsby. How Marcus Webb thought he was being subtle when he texted under his desk. The elaborate lies they constructed to explain missing homework or failed tests. I'd always been able to spot student deception from across the classroom, but I'd missed the signs of my own wife's betrayal happening right in my kitchen. Some detective I was. During lunch, I called my best friend Sam Patel. Sam was an IT consultant who'd helped me navigate everything from setting up my home network to understanding why my laptop made angry beeping sounds. If anyone could help me figure out how to investigate my own marriage, it was Sam. You want to do what? Sam asked when I explained the situation. I want to find out what's really going on, I said. I need to know who she's seeing, how long it's been happening, and what my options are. Drew, man, are you sure you want to go down this road? Maybe you should just talk to her first. Talk to her. Sam, she's calling me by the wrong name when she talks to her boyfriend. I think we're past the heart-to-heart conversation stage. There was a long pause. Okay, Sam said finally. But we do this smart. No breaking into her email, no tracking apps, nothing that could get you in trouble later. We stick to what's already visible. That evening, I started paying attention in ways I hadn't before. Natalie's purse, usually a chaotic mess of receipts and lip gloss, now sat organized and zipped tight. Her laptop, which used to stay open on the kitchen counter, disappeared into the bedroom each night. She'd developed a sudden interest in fitness, joining a gym across town instead of the perfectly good one 5 minutes from our house. It's got better equipment, she explained when I asked about the choice. And the membership was cheaper. I'd been married to Natalie long enough to know that she'd never chosen anything based on price if there was a more convenient option available. The woman once paid $40 for a sandwich because it was delivered, instead of driving 10 minutes to pick up the same sandwich for $12. By Friday, I'd compiled a mental list of changes that painted a clear picture. New underwear that I never saw her wear around the house. A sudden interest in wine bars and restaurants downtown. A gym membership across town. Hotel points being saved for special occasions. And a boyfriend who thought he was sleeping with a woman married to someone named Tom. The final piece of evidence came Saturday morning. Natalie was in the shower when her phone buzzed with a text message. The screen lit up with a preview that made my blood freeze. Can't stop thinking about Thursday night. When can we do that again? D. Not Mia. Not her boss. Not her sister Tessa. D was someone who'd shared Thursday night with my wife. Someone who was thinking about doing it again. Someone who was comfortable enough to send suggestive messages to her personal phone. I stared at the phone until the screen went dark, my reflection staring back at me from the black surface. 39 years old, graying at the temples, laugh lines that had developed during happier times. I looked like exactly what I was, a suburban husband who'd gotten comfortable, who'd stopped paying attention, who'd been replaced by someone whose name started with D. When Natalie came out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her hair, she found me sitting on the edge of our bed with her phone in my hands. Your phone was buzzing, I said, holding it out to her. She took it without meeting my eyes, glanced at the screen, and set it aside without responding to the message. Just work stuff, she said, moving to her dresser to pick out clothes. On Saturday morning? Real estate doesn't take weekends off, Drew. You know that. I watched her get dressed, noting the care she took with her appearance for a Saturday that she'd claimed had no special plans. The matching underwear said I'd never seen before. The perfume she usually saved for date nights that we hadn't had in months. What are your plans today? I asked. Oh, you know. Errands. Maybe meet Mia for lunch. Nothing exciting. Another lie, delivered with the same casual tone she used to discuss grocery lists and utility bills. I was married to a stranger who looked like my wife, sounded like my wife, but had become someone else entirely. Someone who was planning to spend her Saturday with D, whoever D was. After she left, I sat in our empty house and tried to figure out what to do next. I could confront her, but I didn't have enough information to make it stick. I could hire a private investigator, but that felt like admitting defeat. I could pretend I hadn't seen anything and hope it would blow over, but that ship had sailed the moment I heard her call me Tom. Instead, I did what any former journalist would do. I decided to investigate. 3 weeks later, I was standing in Sam Patel's backyard, dressed as Sherlock Holmes, and nursing a beer that tasted like betrayal. Sam's annual Halloween party was Briarwood's social event of the season. The kind of gathering where suburban secrets got drunk and started talking too loudly. You look like you're investigating a murder, Sam said, appearing at my elbow dressed as a vampire. Try to look like you're having fun, or people will start asking questions. Maybe I want them to ask questions, I replied, watching Natalie work the crowd near the pool. She'd come as Catwoman, poured into a black leather outfit that left very little to the imagination. The costume was new, expensive, and definitely not purchased with me in mind. Drew, I'm serious. You're radiating hostile energy. It's making my other guests nervous. I forced a smile and took another sip of beer. Better. Marginally. Now tell me what you've found out. Over the past 3 weeks, I'd become a master of domestic espionage. I'd learned that Natalie's mysterious Thursday night activities were a weekly occurrence, that her gym membership included a lot more cardio than she was getting on the elliptical machines, that her sudden interest in downtown restaurants coincided perfectly with a series of hotel charges on our credit card statement. Charges she'd explained as client entertainment, when I'd casually mentioned them. Most importantly, I'd figured out who D was. Daniel Kerr, I said, nodding toward the pool where a man dressed as Tarzan was holding court with a group of admiring soccer moms. Briarwood's finest, patrol officer, married, 2 kids, and apparently very interested in real estate. Sam followed my gaze. The cop? Drew, are you sure? I'm sure. I've seen them together twice this week. Once at that wine bar on 5th Street. Once coming out of the Marriott downtown. They weren't discussing property values. Daniel Kerr was everything I wasn't. 6'2", muscled like a gym advertisement, with the kind of confident swagger that came from carrying a badge and a gun. He'd moved to Briarwood 2 years ago when he married Rachel Morrison, a local veterinarian who ran a dog rescue out of their converted garage. Rachel was a good person, the kind of woman who spent her weekends nursing abandoned puppies back to health. She deserved better than a husband who was cheating with married real estate agents. What are you going to do? Sam asked. Before I could answer, Natalie's laugh rang out across the party. She was standing close to Daniel, her hand resting on his chest as she said something that made him grin. The intimacy between them was obvious to anyone who cared to look, which apparently was everyone except Daniel's wife. Rachel Kerr stood about 20 feet away, dressed as Wonder Woman, and talking to a group of women about her latest rescue case. She was completely oblivious to the fact that her husband was eye-fucking my wife, in front of half the neighborhood. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, I said. Which is a show. I finished my beer and started walking toward the pool. Sam grabbed my arm. Drew, don't do anything stupid. Stupid would be pretending I don't know what's happening. This is justice. I made my way through the crowd, smiling and nodding at neighbors who'd been watching my marriage fall apart for weeks, without bothering to mention it to me. The Hendersons, who lived 2 houses down. The Patels from the corner house. Mia Rodriguez, who was dressed as a witch and looked like she was enjoying the real-life drama more than any costume party. When I reached Natalie and Daniel, they were deep in conversation about something that required a lot of touching and whispering. Neither of them noticed me approaching until I was close enough to hear Daniel saying, "Your husband seems like a nice guy, but he's got no idea what he's got at home." "Drew's a good man," Natalie replied, her hands still resting on Daniel's chest. "He just doesn't pay attention anymore. He's too wrapped up in his students and his books to notice what's happening in his own house." "His loss," Daniel said, his hand moving to rest on Natalie's hip. "My gain." That's when I cleared my throat. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying just enough volume to catch the attention of nearby partygoers. "I hate to interrupt, but I think there's something you should know about what's happening in my house." Natalie spun around, her face going pale beneath her cat mask. Daniel's hand dropped from her hip, but he didn't step back. If anything, he moved slightly forward, as if positioning himself between Natalie and me. "Drew," Natalie said, her voice tight with warning. "We were just talking about my attention span, from what I could hear, and about what Officer Kerr here has been gaining while I've been losing." The conversations around us began to quiet as people sensed drama brewing. I could see phones coming out, cameras being positioned. In about 30 seconds, this was going to be all over social media. Perfect. "I think you've had too much to drink," Daniel said, his cop voice kicking in. "Maybe you should go inside and cool off." "Actually, I've only had 1 beer. I wanted to stay sharp for this conversation. You see, I've been paying attention lately, more than you might think." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Hotel receipts are interesting things, aren't they? Especially when they're charged to your family credit card for rooms your spouse claims she's using for client meetings. Natalie's eyes widened. "Drew, stop." "Oh, I'm just getting started. Did you know that the Marriott downtown keeps records of who signs in for their jacuzzi suites? They're very thorough. Great customer service." I unfolded the paper and began to read. October 15th, Suite 412, signed in by Natalie Harlan and Daniel Kerr. October 22nd, same suite, same names. October 29th, that was last Thursday, in case anyone's keeping track. Suite 418, because I guess you wanted a change of scenery. The party had gone completely silent now. Everyone was staring at us, phones recording, neighbors who'd known us for years watching my marriage implode in real time. Daniel stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You need to shut your mouth right now." "Or what? You'll arrest me for reading hotel receipts out loud?" "I'm pretty sure that's not illegal, Officer Kerr. Unlike adultery, which is still on the books in this state." "Drew, please," Natalie said, reaching for my arm. Let's go home and talk about this privately. I pulled away from her touch. Privately? Like how you've been privately fucking a married cop for the past 2 months? Like how you've been privately spending our money on hotel rooms? Like how you've been privately calling me Tom when you talk to your boyfriend? The crowd gasped. Someone's phone clattered to the ground. In the distance, I could see Rachel Kerr pushing through the crowd, her Wonder Woman costume looking incongruous as she moved toward her husband with murder in her eyes. You called him Tom? Rachel's voice cut through the silence like a blade. You've been cheating on me, and you don't even have the decency to get his name right? Daniel spun around to face his wife, his Tarzan costume suddenly looking ridiculous instead of impressive. Rachel, I can explain. Explain what? Rachel's voice was getting louder. Explain how you've been lying to me for months? Explain how you've been screwing around with a married woman while I've been home taking care of our kids? The party had officially become a disaster. People were backing away from us, but nobody was leaving. This was better than cable television. It's not what it looks like, Daniel said, which had to be the stupidest thing anyone had said all night. Really? Rachel pulled out her phone and started scrolling through something. Because I've got text messages here that say otherwise. Messages I found on your phone last week that I've been trying to pretend weren't real. She began reading. Can't wait to see you Thursday. Wear that thing I like. Your husband will never know. She looked up at Natalie. That was you, wasn't it? Natalie opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since I'd known her, she was completely speechless. And here's my personal favorite, Rachel continued. I love how you taste. Can't get enough. See you at the usual place. She looked at Daniel. Very romantic, honey. Really shows your way with words. Daniel lunged forward, trying to grab Rachel's phone. Give me that. Don't you dare touch me, Rachel snapped, holding the phone away from him. You lost the right to touch me the minute you decided to touch her. That's when things got physical. Daniel, panicked and embarrassed, made another grab for the phone. Rachel pulled back, lost her balance, and stumbled toward the pool. I moved to catch her. Daniel moved to grab the phone, and Natalie moved to get between us. The result was a tangle of bodies that ended with Daniel and me facing off, while Rachel and Natalie circled each other like angry cats. This is all your fault, Daniel said, pointing at me. If you'd been taking care of your wife, none of this would have happened. My fault? I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. I'm not the one who took an oath to protect and serve, and decided that included servicing other men's wives. Daniel shoved me, hard. I stumbled backward, caught my balance, and came back swinging. I'm not a fighter. I'm a high school English teacher who gets winded walking up 2 flights of stairs. But rage is a powerful motivator, and I had 2 months' worth of rage built up and ready to go. My first punch caught Daniel in the nose. Blood spurted down his chest, staining his Tarzan costume. He came back with a haymaker that caught me in the ribs and sent me to my knees. The crowd was screaming now. Someone was yelling about calling the police, which was ironic, since one of the people in the fight was already a police officer. I got back to my feet and tackled Daniel around the waist, driving him backward toward the pool. We went down together, rolling around on Sam's perfectly manicured lawn like a couple of teenagers. Stop it, Natalie was screaming. Both of you, stop it. But we weren't stopping. Daniel got on top of me and started throwing punches. I covered up as best I could and tried to roll away. He was stronger, but I was angrier, and anger can make up for a lot of disadvantages. I managed to get my knee up into his stomach, doubling him over long enough for me to scramble away. When he came after me again, I was ready. This time, my punch caught him square in the jaw. His head snapped back, his eyes rolled up, and he went down like a sack of potatoes. The party went silent except for the sound of my heavy breathing and Daniel groaning on the ground. I stood over him, my knuckles bleeding, my shirt torn, my Sherlock Holmes costume ruined. But for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Stay away from my wife, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, and stay away from me. I turned to look at Natalie, who was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Fear? Respect? Disgust? Maybe all three. We're going home, I said. Now. She nodded and followed me through the crowd of stunned partygoers. As we reached the gate, I heard Rachel Kerr's voice behind us. Don't bother coming home, Daniel. I'll leave your stuff on the front porch. Oh, the ride home was silent except for the sound of Natalie crying. Not the dramatic sobbing you see in movies, but the quiet, steady tears of someone whose world has just collapsed in front of 50 witnesses with camera phones. I kept my eyes on the road and my hands steady on the wheel, though both were shaking from adrenaline and the aftermath of my first fistfight since middle school. My ribs ached where Daniel had hit me, and my knuckles were starting to swell. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional numbness that had settled over me like a blanket. "Drew," Natalie said finally as we pulled into our driveway. "I'm sorry." I turned off the engine and sat in the darkness of our garage, staring at the wall where we'd hung our bikes 5 years ago and never used them. For which part? The affair, the lies, or getting caught? All of it, everything. I never meant for it to happen. But it did happen. For 2 months, it happened. Every Thursday it happened. Every time you charged a hotel room to our credit card, it happened. Every time you called me Tom while you were making plans with him, it happened. She turned in her seat to face me. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, her Catwoman costume looking pathetic in the dim light of the garage. "How did you know about the Tom thing?" "I heard you on the phone 3 weeks ago. You were planning your Thursday night adventure, and you told him that Tom was too busy grading papers to notice what was happening in his own house." "Oh, God." She put her face in her hands. "Drew, you what? You forgot my name? You were so deep into your fantasy that you couldn't even remember who you were married to?" "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Natalie? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you decided our marriage wasn't worth the effort anymore, so you went shopping for an upgrade." We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, I could hear the Hendersons' dog barking, probably upset by all the unusual activity. Normal suburban sounds in what was no longer a normal suburban life. "Are you going to divorce me?" Natalie asked. The question hung in the air between us like smoke. A month ago, the answer would have been automatic. No, we'd work through it. We'd go to counseling, we'd find a way to rebuild. But that was before I'd seen the hotel receipts. Before I'd watched her touch another man with the intimacy she used to reserve for me. Before I'd heard her dismiss our marriage as something that wasn't worth her attention. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Right now, I'm trying to figure out if there's anything left to save." "There is. Drew, there is. This thing with Daniel, it was just what? A mistake? A midlife crisis? A temporary lapse in judgment that happened to last 2 months and cost us $3,000 in hotel bills?" She didn't have an answer for that. We went inside and stood in our kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd overheard her planning her betrayal 3 weeks earlier. Everything looked the same. The granite countertops we'd saved for, the backsplash we'd installed ourselves, the refrigerator covered with photos from happier times. But it all felt different now, contaminated by the knowledge of what had been happening while I graded papers in the next room. "I'm sleeping in the guest room," I said. Natalie nodded. "For how long?" "I don't know. Until I figure out what I want to do next." "And what about us? What about our marriage?" I looked at her standing there in her ruined costume, and for a moment I could see the woman I'd fallen in love with 12 years ago. The woman who used to laugh at my jokes, who used to curl up next to me on Sunday mornings, who used to make me feel like the luckiest man in Briarwood. But that woman had been calling me Tom for 2 months. "I don't know," I said again. "I honestly don't know." The next morning brought a new kind of hell. I woke up in the guest room to find my phone buzzing with text messages, missed calls, and social media notifications. The video of our fight had already made it to Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Apparently, watching a high school English teacher beat up a cop at a Halloween party was exactly the kind of content that went viral in suburban communities. The text ranged from supportive, "Dude, you nailed him," from Sam, to concerned, "Are you okay? Call me," from my sister, to gleefully gossipy, "OMG, did you see the video?" from numbers I didn't recognize. But it was the call from my principal that made my stomach drop. "Drew," Janet Morrison's voice was carefully neutral. "I think we need to talk. Can you come in early today?" Janet Morrison had been the principal at Briarwood High for 15 years. She'd hired me, supported me through my transition from journalism to teaching, and had always been fair and professional. She was also Daniel Kerr's mother-in-law, married to his wife Rachel's father. This was going to be awkward. I showered, dressed in my most professional clothes, and drove to school an hour early. The hallways were empty except for a few custodians and early arriving teachers who gave me looks that ranged from curious to sympathetic. Janet's office was exactly what you'd expect from a career educator. Bookshelves lined with education journals, walls covered with photos of graduating classes, and a desk that managed to look both organized and overwhelmed at the same time. "Sit down, Drew," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. We need to discuss what happened last night. I know how it looks. It looks like one of my teachers got into a fist fight with a police officer at a neighborhood party. It looks like that fight was recorded and is currently being shared across every social media platform in existence. And it looks like the cause of that fight was your wife's affair with said police officer. I winced. Janet, I can explain. I'm sure you can. And under normal circumstances, what you do in your private life would be exactly that, private. But these aren't normal circumstances. You punched a cop, Drew, on camera, at a party attended by half the parents of your students. She pulled out her phone and showed me the video. It was worse than I'd imagined. The camera caught everything. Me reading the hotel receipts, Daniel shoving me, the fight that followed, and my final words about staying away from my wife. The comments below the video were a mix of support and criticism, but they all had one thing in common. They mentioned Briarwood High School and my name. The school board is going to want answers, Janet said, and I need to be able to give them something better than my English teacher had a mental breakdown because his wife was cheating. It wasn't a mental breakdown. It was justice. Justice. Janet leaned back in her chair. Drew, you're a teacher. You're supposed to be a role model for these kids. What kind of message does it send when you solve your problems with your fists? I thought about that for a moment. Maybe it sends the message that some things are worth fighting for. Maybe it shows them that you don't have to be a victim just because someone decides to treat you like one. Or maybe it shows them that violence is an acceptable response to emotional pain. We stared at each other across her desk. Janet Morrison was a good principal and a good person, but she was also someone who had to think about the school's reputation, the parents' reactions, and the school board's expectations. What happens now? I asked. Now you go teach your classes like nothing happened. You keep your head down, you do your job, and you hope this blows over before the school board decides to make an example of you. And if it doesn't blow over, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I spent the rest of the day trying to teach Shakespeare to teenagers who were more interested in the video of their English teacher fighting a cop than they were in the symbolism in Macbeth. Every class brought new whispers, new stares, and new questions that I couldn't answer. Mr. Harlan, Jennifer Morrison asked during fourth period, is it true that your wife was cheating on you? We're here to discuss literature, not my personal life. But the video has nothing to do with whether Macbeth's ambition was his tragic flaw. Now, can someone tell me what Lady Macbeth's sleepwalking scene represents? It went on like that all day. Students who'd never shown interest in anything beyond their phones suddenly wanted to discuss my marriage, my fight, and my future. Teachers who'd barely acknowledged me in the hallways stopped by my classroom to offer support or ask for details. By the time the final bell rang, I was exhausted. I drove home to find Natalie's car in the driveway and an unfamiliar sedan parked on the street. Through the living room window, I could see Natalie sitting on the couch with a woman I didn't recognize. Middle-aged, professional-looking, with a briefcase open on our coffee table. I walked into my own house, feeling like an intruder. Drew, Natalie stood up quickly. This is Linda Patterson. She's a lawyer. Linda Patterson extended her hand. Mr. Harlan, I've been advising your wife about her options moving forward. Options? Given the public nature of last night's incident, there are several legal considerations we need to discuss. The assault charges that Officer Kerr could file, the potential civil suit, the impact on any future divorce proceedings. I looked at Natalie. You're already talking to divorce lawyers? I'm protecting myself, she said. After last night, after what you did? What I did? What I did was find out that my wife has been cheating on me for 2 months and decided not to pretend I was okay with it. Linda Patterson cleared her throat. Mr. Harlan, I understand you're upset, but assault is a serious charge. Officer Kerr would be well within his rights to press charges, and given that the incident was recorded and widely distributed, the district attorney might decide to prosecute even if he doesn't want to press charges. So I'm supposed to apologize for defending my marriage? You're supposed to be smart about what comes next, Linda said. Right now, you're the victim of an affair, which generates sympathy. But if you're charged with assault, you become the aggressor, and that changes everything. I sat down in my own living room and looked at my wife and her lawyer. 24 hours ago, I'd been a high school English teacher with a cheating wife and a broken heart. Now I was a potential criminal with a viral video and a marriage that was circling the drain. What do you want from me? I asked. We want you to be reasonable, Linda said. We want you to consider a amicable separation while emotions are running high. We want you to think about what's best for everyone involved. What's best for everyone involved would have been my wife not fucking a married cop for 2 months. Drew, Natalie said quietly. Please. Please what? Please pretend this didn't happen? Please act like everything is fine? Please move out of my own house so you and your lawyer can figure out how to screw me over in the divorce? That's not what this is about. Then what is it about, Natalie? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to turn yourself from the cheating wife into the victim of domestic violence. Linda Patterson closed her briefcase. I think I should go. Natalie, call me tomorrow and we'll discuss next steps. After she left, Natalie and I sat in our living room in silence. Outside, I could see neighbors walking their dogs, kids riding bikes, normal people living normal lives. Inside, my marriage was dying in real time. Are you going to have me arrested? I asked. I don't want to. But Drew, you scared me last night. I've never seen you like that. You've never given me a reason to be like that. So this is my fault? Everything that happened, it's all my fault? I thought about that question. The affair was her fault. The lies were her fault. The hotel bills and the secret texts and calling me by another man's name, all of that was her fault. But the fight? The public humiliation? The viral video that was probably going to cost me my job? That was on me. The affair is your fault, I said finally. What I did about it is mine. She nodded. So where does that leave us? I don't know. But I'm not moving out of my own house, and I'm not apologizing for finding out the truth. And I'm not going to be punished for the rest of my life for making a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. This was a choice. You made it every Thursday for 2 months. We stared at each other across the coffee table, where her lawyer had just been planning my legal destruction. 12 years of marriage, and it had come down to this. Two people who used to love each other, figuring out how to hurt each other as little as possible, while they tore their life apart. I'm keeping the guest room, I said, standing up, and I'm not talking to any more lawyers unless I have my own. Drew, I'm done talking for tonight, Natalie. I'm done with all of it. I went to the guest room and closed the door, but I could hear her crying in the living room. Soft, broken sobs that might have moved me a week ago. Now they just sounded like the soundtrack to